Nerdcast assemble!
Stay dandy, baby.
Goblins, pigs, worms, dolphins, bulls, and even Ren the creepy sheep man returns for another batshit crazy episode of Tower of God. That's right, my friends, the Tower of God anime returns for the penultimate episode of the season, and things are really kicking into high gear in this episode, and I cannot wait to see how it's all going to conclude. So, before I begin my review, I would just like to continue to thank you guys for watching these reviews. They've been very successful on my channel. I absolutely love all of the comments and all of the thumbs up that I've been getting and talking with you guys about this series, which is continuing to blow my mind away with its production value, its creativity, and its amazing characters. And this episode right here was another fantastic one. Of course, though, before we begin yet again, please make sure to check out my Patreon in the description box below. If you guys make a small donation to me, I'll review an anime series of your choice. You have the power. Make it happen. But let's go ahead and jump right into this episode of Tower of God, which is just insane. It's the type of episode where when I start to explain this stuff out loud, it's just gonna make me sound like a crazy bum on the street who's just talking to himself, and none of it makes any fucking sense whatsoever. But this episode right here, guys, whoo boy, was it just dripping with a lot of really good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So at the end of the last episode, we got to see that Bam and Rachel were going to have an opportunity to perform in this final test, which would allow Rachel to move forward as well as everyone else. And in this episode, Bam had to get permission from the administrator, which is that weird giant underwater monster, which of course just decides to let him do this. They allow them to go into this competition and everybody is going to be involved. So let's break down what's actually going to happen in this underwater hunt. Yes, this episode is going to involve some sort of weird underwater hunt type of thing, which honestly doesn't shock me all that much. The theme of ocean and water and underwater creatures is something that's always been very prevalent within Tower of God, whether it be the introduction of the giant eel in the first episode or just the fact that Shinsu itself essentially is just like the power of water. It's always been something that's been like in the background of the entire show, and this episode right here takes full advantage of that, as Bam and Rachel are going to have to go through this test where they're going to have to go into this ocean, which is filled with all of these fish, and these fish are actually going to have to be captured by these creatures called net dolphins, which look more like manatees, I have to admit, but apparently they have to capture all these fish, including Bam and Rachel, and take them up to the queen net dolphin, which essentially looks just like a giant jellyfish's butthole, and then they have to get captured in that and spit back up onto land, and if that happens, everything's going to be peachy keen. Following me? Good. Things are already weird. They're about to get even stranger. The other people who are involved in this competition are actually going to have to protect them from all of these weird things, which are going to be going after the net dolphins and the fish as well. And it just so happens to be a group of goblins who also have these giant worm monsters and a group of really angry pigs. Oh, but wait, there's more. There's another wild card in this competition. It's a weird, freaky-looking creature which goes by the name of the Bull, and the only way to truly describe this monster is just nightmare fuel. In fact, it kind of reminds me out of like a monster that I would see in like Berserk or something. I don't know, it just looks very ghastly, and it has like this weird like sort of human-esque body with a lizard tail and a weird face that just splits open with a single eyeball and one massive tentacle which it uses to not only beat the shit out of its opponents, but to also squeeze the very life from them. So I need to stress, while all of this is really weird and kind of overwhelming with all the information that they're just throwing at you, it's surprisingly easy to follow. I mean, it's just really outlandish in the way that it's actually portrayed. What's really cool about the episode, though, is that pretty much every major character gets to do something, and they all have like a special role to play. And what I love is that we even get to spend some time with characters who haven't really gotten a lot of development, and a lot of ones that seem like they've been there the whole time, but we get to learn a little bit more about them in this episode, like this one character who goes by the name of Nare. She's the little girl with blonde hair who seems like she does not belong in this competition at all. And we get to learn that she's apparently an anima, which means she can control animals of just about any kind, and she even has this one weird like bird-like creature which he summons in this episode to do a little reconnaissance and to find this mysterious entrance to this underground water area. It's really strange, but again, it just shows that, wow, the creators of the series are either just really freaking creative or they're on drugs. Speaking of drug-induced nightmare fuel, it is worth mentioning that Shibisu probably gets the worst of it in this episode. He always seems to get the worst luck when it comes to going through these competitions, and he's the first one who comes face to face with the bull, which, hilariously enough, actually does end up ignoring him initially until he decides to attack it with Serena's knife. But of course, this is also just to bring in the characters of Anaak and Dorsey, who have a really cool competition where they're going to fight this monster for 5 minutes at a time, and if Dorsey is able to bring it down, she'll actually end up getting the Green April. And this leads to a lot of really solid action. This is basically the bulk of this episode, is watching all of the confrontations that they actually have, while everybody else is just sort of biding their time and waiting to hopefully get Rachel and Bam to pass this test, with Rack and frickin' Parasol using their spear abilities to sort of be on standby, Hots who's looking out for all of the goblins and their giant weird freaky worm monsters. I don't know what the deal is here. It's crazy. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter much when you have everything that's going on with Anaak and Dorsey, not to mention the reintroduction of the character of Ren. No, I'm not going to say his family's name because it is absolutely ridiculous and I'm going to butcher the name yet again. However, by the end of the episode, this is when you actually realize that this entire competition is something that was kind of cooked up. Something that was sort of created through the works of Ren and Hong Song-yu. We already know in the previous episode that they formed something of a weird alliance here, and Hong Song-yu has no problems with actually even helping out Ren in going through this so that he can attain these weapons, but this episode really goes into some extreme dark territory with not only the death of some of these characters, but the fact that the bull monster is being controlled by Ren, and he's using this to not only, separate Anaak and Dorsey, but to also take out Anaak personally, as well as taking back the weapon, the Green April. It's also worth mentioning, and it's pretty heavily implied in this episode, that Ren is none other than the one who probably killed Anaak's mother, the true Anaak Jihad, which is a pretty big freaking deal, as he actually does have the necklace that she was wearing. He displays it when he has his weird freaky tongue come out of the weird, sheep outfit. It's also very clear that they don't want to show us what this guy's true form actually is, and he's just, sort of wearing the skin or the suit of this, Yuga-type character. But again, it just sort of amplifies his creepiness even more, especially when he has a short fight with Anaak, which is really freaking intense, I have to say. Like I said, just sort of trying to pinpoint what this powers of this guy are is kind of insane. He spits out and just regurgitates this mass of just weird underwater sea eels, which are really, really freaky deaky. And he's also able to straight up just impale Anaak in this episode, which I don't think that they're going to kill her character off, but it's one of the most damage that we've actually seen her sustain thus far in the series, and it lets us know that Ren is a really serious guy, and he's also kind of sadistic in the fact that he seems to take a lot of pleasure in doing this. It's made even more disturbing when we have a scene where Dorsey's actually fighting against the bull, and she ends up losing to it, only for it to suddenly arrive and drop her body right in front of Anaak. And this is when, Ren decides, you know what, I'm going to give the Green April to her and allow her to actually kill Anaak, because that's something that she's actually been wanting to do, or at least that's the implication. I feel that there's a rivalry between these characters, but all the stuff that they've been through in this competition, I really don't think that there's any sort of raw hatred between Dorsey and Anaak. I have a feeling this is going to be their opportunity to come together and possibly take down Ren, or at least, try to fight against him at the same time. The episode ends with, frankly, just a lot of chaos, with everything going wrong, with Parasol accidentally throwing a freaking spear at one of these goblins, which gets them to go on the attack with all of their giant worm monsters, going after Hots and all of their team, Shibisu desperately getting lost, with Bam and Rachel basically just relaxing throughout most of the episode, not realizing that all of this crazy shit is going on around them. Everything is falling apart in the last couple episodes of the season, and I really can't wait to see how it's all going to have some sort of really interesting resolution to it. Really, I think the strongest material definitely came from all the stuff with Anaak and Dorsey, and of course the return of Ren in this episode, and it also makes me realize that Hong Song-yu is not a very nice guy. I don't fully trust him in what he's actually doing in this competition, and he seems to be taking advantage of it in a very creepy way. Maybe it's all leading to something even bigger to the series. I mean, that's been one of the biggest hallmarks of Tower of God, is how we're really just at the very beginning of what is overall a very massive story, and there's still so much more to explain, so much more mystery to this world and how it works, and how it's all going to tie into the whole King of Jihad storyline, the princesses. There's a lot of material to take in this episode, and to be perfectly honest, like a lot of the other episodes, the pacing was really fast, so it's very easy to get lost in this one. So this is an episode that begs re-watching, but honestly, I'm down to do that because it was pretty damned exciting. So, what's the rundown on this episode of Tower of God? Like I said, there's just so much to breathe in this episode, and I think it's the overall creativity again which really made this one for me. I mean, there's no like theme that I can think of that ties together dolphins, goblins, worms, and bulls, and even pigs. Like, and there's nothing like holding these threads together. It's just, let's have fun and let's do something different and crazy, and that's what they continue to do with the actual show. Again, the characters are the ones that truly do make it. They all manage to make them really interesting. Even the ones who look like they're going to end up being side characters end up becoming a little deeper in every episode that they appear in. Like the character of Parasol and Array, characters that I felt were never ultimately going to do anything, are fairly important characters in this episode. Whether they're hurting or helping the situation, it manages to be pretty interesting. But really, it's that return of Ren in this episode that really sold this episode for me. That and him controlling that weird monster, the bull, and all of the scenes with Anaak and Dorsey. Of course, the big revelation, of course, that he could very well be the one who killed her mother. It's almost a certainty at this point. And again, he's like definitely the biggest real villain-like character that we've actually seen in the entire season thus far. Like I said, he's incredibly sadistic and creepy, taking pleasure in the pain of others and seeming to have a lot of fun while he does it. Not to mention doing something as disturbing as giving that weapon to Dorsey to try and get her to actually do his dirty work for him. It's really, really freaky. And what's surprising about all of it is that I thought that this was going to be a challenge for Bam and Rachel, something that was going to give them something really difficult to go against, and for the most part, they're just kind of hanging out in this episode, which is good because we finally get to see more of them, just interacting with one another and showing that they're on good terms, and it's something that I wanted to see a lot more since the beginning of the series, as that's been like sort of Bam's entire journey, is trying to find Rachel, to interact with her, and to make peace with her over everything that happened at the beginning when she entered this like competition in the first place. He is getting over the abandonment issues, and she seems to be doing so as well. And, the relationship is, dare I say it, very sweet. And it works really well in the show, and it's an amazing juxtaposition to all of the other crazy action and violence that's going on in this episode. And again, the world of Tower of God is again, one of the most striking things about the entire series. It seems limitless and endless in terms of what it can actually do and what it can create. And again, this is another showcase for that. I mean, net dolphins, weird manatee-like creatures which create giant nets to feed into the butt of a jellyfish. That alone is pretty freaking weird. But no, weird freaky goblins which have interesting designs that ride on giant freaking worm monsters that try to eat the net dolphin. Like, it's just, saying this out loud is like, I couldn't have come up with this stuff. And clearly, they had a lot of fun doing something a little different here. And again, that's what gives the show kind of like a similar but also very different vibe than some of the other anime that I watched. It also helps that it's based on a Korean webtoon, so that already ends up giving it like a brand new identity of its own, which again made this a solid episode of the series. Production value wise, it's another great looking episode. I think this has been one of the most consistent anime seasons I've seen in a long time. The action choreography, fighting against the bull and Ren, everything looked really good. The colors really popped. Every character again looks distinctive and has their very own design. No one just blends into the background. The music cues are also really awesome in the episode, and even just the scenes of Bam and Rachel when they're underwater with all the fish that are sort of like glowing around them and everything, it's hypnotic in a sense. It's like looking into a freaking lava lamp. You just can't turn away, and you just want to enjoy the beauty. And then the next thing you know, you're seeing a monster eat a dude alive. It's really crazy stuff. It's Tower of God, and this was a great episode, which is why I'm going to drop a 5 out of 5 on this episode. So there it is, my friends. That is my review of the 11th episode of Tower of God. I'd love to get your thoughts about it, and you can sound off in the comments section below what you think about this penultimate episode of the season. Do you have any theories as to what's going to happen in the final episode of the season, and what do you hope to see from the future? Do you hope that there's going to be another season of the show? Do you want to see this continue? Do you want to see a full anime adaptation of this super long Korean webtoon? Let's discuss that and all of the things in this episode in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this one. Also, make sure to hit that like button. Helps out these videos tremendously. Really allows people to see my videos. If you are already subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that bell notification icon, as it's going to let you know when all of my videos are released. And again, like I said, check out my Patreon. Small donation will get you an anime review of your choice. You guys have the power to make that happen, and any and all donations would be incredibly appreciated. It's going to help make this channel successful. It's going to help us get better materials, and it's just going to help keep the lights on, and there's nothing wrong with that. So thank you all again for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.